The sun was setting over the Montana plains, and Sarah Mitchell stood barefoot in the dried grass, watching a horse that wouldn't come near her. She had driven 3 hours from the city where she worked as a nurse, and her shoulders still carried the weight of too many double shifts and too many goodbyes to patients she had grown to care about. The ranch belonged to her late aunt, and now it belonged to her, though she had no idea what to do with 40 acres and a barn that leaned slightly to the left. The horse was a chestnut mare with eyes that held something Sarah recognized. Fear, maybe, or loss, or both. The previous owner had left a note saying the horse's name was Autumn, and that she'd been through some hard times. Sarah understood hard times. Her marriage had ended 2 years ago, and her children were grown and busy with their own lives, and sometimes the silence in her apartment felt like it might swallow her whole. She had come here, thinking she might sell the place, but standing in the golden light with dust motes dancing. In the air she felt something she hadn't felt in years: space, room to breathe. The possibility of starting over even at 56, when most people thought the best parts of life were behind them. A truck rumbled up the dirt road, and Sarah turned to see an old Ford pulling to a stop near the fence. A man climbed out, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had worked hard for many decades. He wore a worn hat and boots that had seen better days, and his face was weathered like the fence posts that dotted the property. "Evening?" he called out. "Name's Henry Carson. I run the ranch next door. Saw your car and thought I'd come by and introduce myself." Sarah walked over and shook his calloused hand. His grip was gentle despite the obvious strength in those fingers. "Sarah Mitchell. I inherited this place from my aunt." Henry nodded slowly. "Martha was a good woman, kept to herself mostly, but she had a kind word for everyone. Sorry for your loss." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the horse in the distance. Sarah noticed Henry's eyes were the color of faded denim, and they held a sadness that seemed old and settled like dust on furniture in an abandoned house. "That mare giving you trouble?" he asked. "She won't let me near her. I've been trying for an hour." Henry studied the horse with the practiced eye of someone who had spent a lifetime around animals. "She's scared. Been hurt probably. Takes time to trust again once that happens." Something in his voice made Sarah look at him more carefully. He wasn't just talking about the horse. "I don't know anything about horses," Sarah admitted. "I'm a nurse. I work with people who are sick or dying, and I'm good at that, but this—" She gestured at the ranch. "This is completely out of my depth." Henry smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger. "People and horses aren't so different. They both need patience and kindness and someone willing to sit with them in their pain without trying to fix everything right away." Over the next few weeks, Henry became a regular visitor. He'd show up in the early morning or late afternoon, always with some excuse. He'd noticed a fence that needed mending, or wanted to drop off some hay for Autumn, or thought Sarah might like some fresh eggs from his chickens. Each time he'd stay a little longer, teaching her things about ranch life with a patience that reminded her of her grandfather. He taught her how to approach Autumn slowly and calmly, how to read the mare's body language and respect her boundaries. He showed her which boards in the barn needed replacing, and how to fix a gate latch that had been sticking. He never made her feel foolish for not knowing things, and he never tried to take over or do things for her. He simply walked beside her, offering guidance when she asked for it. Sarah learned that Henry's wife had passed away 5 years ago from cancer. They had been married for 38 years and had never been able to have children, despite wanting them desperately. His ranch was smaller than it used to be because he'd sold off parcels over the years, as maintaining it alone became too difficult. He had a dog named Scout who was getting old, and 2 horses he'd had for nearly 2 decades. One afternoon while they were working on the barn, Henry suddenly stopped and looked at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "There's a man named Jack Thornton who's been buying up land around here. He's made offers on most of the ranches in the valley, including mine. He wants to develop the area, put in some kind of resort or vacation homes for rich folks from the city." Sarah set down the hammer she'd been holding. "What does that have to do with me?" "He'll come for your land, too. And he doesn't take no for an answer easily. He's got money and lawyers, and he knows how to pressure people. Some folks around here have sold because they couldn't afford not to. Others sold because he made their lives difficult until they gave in." "Has he made you an offer?" Sarah asked. Henry nodded. 3 times. Each time more than the last. "But this ranch is all I have left of the life Nancy and I built together. It's where I scattered her ashes out by the creek. It's where every fence post and every tree holds a memory. Money can't replace that," Sarah understood. She thought about the apartment in the city that had never really felt like home, and the job that left her exhausted and empty, and the life she'd been living that felt like going through motions. "I'm not selling either," she said. Henry's expression shifted from worry to relief and then to something else. Gratitude maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit. He won't like that. Jack isn't used to people standing up to him. Then he's going to have to get used to it, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. Jack Thornton arrived on a Thursday driving a black Mercedes that looked absurdly out of place on the dirt road. He was younger than Sarah expected, maybe early 40s, with styled hair and expensive clothes, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had papers with him showing property values and development plans and projections of what the area could become. "You could make a considerable profit, Ms. Mitchell," he said, sitting at her kitchen table uninvited. "Enough to retire comfortably anywhere you want. This ranch is too much work for someone alone, especially someone without experience. Why struggle when you could be free?" Sarah poured herself coffee and didn't offer him any. "I'm not interested in selling, Mr. Thornton." His smile tightened. "Perhaps you don't understand the situation. This area is changing whether you like it or not. The other landowners are on board. You'd be surrounded by development. Your quality of life would decrease significantly. Better to sell now while the offer is generous?" The answer is no. Jack stood and his pleasant facade slipped just slightly. "You're making a mistake. This ranch will drain your resources and your energy, and in the end you'll sell anyway, but for much less. I'd hate to see that happen." After he left, Sarah's hands were shaking. She wasn't a confrontational person by nature. She spent her career caring for people, finding compromises, mediating between difficult family members, and demanding doctors. But something about Jack Thornton's entitled assumption that everything and everyone had a price made her angry. Henry found her sitting on the porch steps an hour later. He sat down beside her without asking what was wrong, as if he already knew. "He came by your place too," Sarah said. "Figured he would. He made it sound like I'm being foolish, like I'm going to regret this." Henry was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun sink lower toward the mountains. "My Nancy used to say that the things worth having are usually the things worth fighting for. Not with fists or violence, but with quiet determination, with showing up every day and doing what you know is right even when it's hard." "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," Sarah admitted. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," Henry said. "It's about being afraid and doing the thing anyway. And you don't have to do it alone." Over the next months, Jack Thornton tried everything. He sent letters from lawyers claiming easement issues and boundary disputes. He had the county inspector come out 3 times looking for code violations. He spread rumors in town that Sarah was going to turn the ranch into some kind of commune, or that Henry was taking advantage of a naive city woman. Each challenge made Sarah more determined. She fixed every violation the inspector found, even when she suspected they were petty and unfair. She hired her own lawyer to review the property documents and found that every claim Jack made was baseless. She held her head high in town and met whispers with polite smiles and refused to engage in gossip. Henry was there through all of it, steady and reliable. He taught her how to ride so she could check fence lines on horseback. He showed her how to identify sick cattle and when to call the vet. He introduced her to other ranchers in the area, good people who were also resisting Jack's pressure, and together they formed a quiet alliance. Autumn. The mare slowly began to trust Sarah. It took months of patient approach and gentle handling, but eventually the horse would come when called and accept treats from Sarah's hand and even allow herself to be ridden. Sarah saw her own journey reflected in Autumn's gradual healing. They were both learning to trust again, learning that not everyone would hurt them, learning that it was possible to start over. One evening, in late fall, Henry and Sarah sat by a fire pit outside the barn, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Scout, the old dog, lay between them, content and warm. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke and dried grass in the coming winter.